Hello guys, and welcome back to the show. Today I want to talk to you about movement patterns. Now the body has different ways of moving. It has almost infinite ways to move to express ourselves, but I like to categorize these movements into 4 distinct categories. Now these categories are not of my making. It's from research, it's from training that I did, and that I like the way that it looks, and I decided to have a look at what would Capoeira movement patterns look like and where they would fit in exactly in those 4 movement patterns. Now the reason why I want to do that with you is I want to see, is there a pattern that we do more than another, or are they all equally targeted? And if they are, that would be fantastic, but if they're not, then perhaps we're missing something, and perhaps we need to fill that void with some accessory work through our warm-up, our cool-down, or just outside of Capoeira training to make sure that we're not overusing certain things. So let's have a look at those patterns together. Alright, so we have 4 categories here. We put one into lower body pushing, so we're using a lot of our quadriceps, a little bit of our glutes, and we're simply standing down. This could be looked like as a squat. We could also look at it as a lunge. We have a lower body pull. Here we can have more so of a deadlift, anything that looks like glute bridges. So we're using more of the posterior chain of our legs. So our hamstrings, more so the glutes, and perhaps a little bit of our back as well. Upper body push. Here in the drawing we have a push-up, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's always going to be a push-up. All these patterns have different versions of them. So upper body push, mostly our pectoral muscles, probably the triceps as well. We're going to jump in here. Upper body pull, so anything that's going to be using our lats, perhaps our posterior chain of the upper body. Now let's go back to our lower body push. This might look familiar because we do it quite a bit in Capoeira. If we look here, we have our little capoeirista in the ginga position, and the force exerted from his legs are essentially pushing him away from the ground, right? Doing the ginga from side to side. We got the front leg that's mostly loaded and the back leg that's just pushing off slightly on the ball of the foot. Here in an esquiva position, it's the same thing. Yes, we do go down, but the concentric phase, or the phase where the muscles contract where against the most amount of force, is when we're getting up from that dodging. When we're kicking, yes, we are using our legs to attack our adversary, but the leg that's on the ground is also exerting a force against the ground, against gravity, to keep us there, and it is more categorized as a push. So there's much more versions of pushing than these 3 examples in Capoeira for a lower body, but these give you a really good idea of how much we do that and what it looks like. You can see that these are very common movements that we're going to do in most of our games. Let's go back to our lower body pull here. Now we don't have much. I've talked about the bridge before, and we have it here where it's mostly our hamstrings and our glutes that are pushing us up. However, this movement, I was debating whether or not to put it there because it's not something that we'll see often in a game. Some people will not do it, and those that do it might not necessarily do it often. So are we really doing that much lower body pull in Capoeira? That is very debatable. Upper body push, this is where we're doing a lot of pushing. So our single arm pushing, even though our elbow is not bent, we're still exerting force against the ground in this negativa, in an esquiva, in all sorts of acrobatics, AU movements. Again, I only have 3 drawings here to express upper body pushing. However, you can imagine that there's a lot more. This is a pattern that we see quite often in Capoeira. And when we look at the antagonist, or the opposite, if you will, of that pattern, upper body pulls, there's nothing. There's really not much. Now, I didn't put anything there. There are some movements that we can find, takedowns or anything like that, but very much like our bridge or our punch, it's not that common in the game. So when we look at the anatomy of our capoeirista here, I put in red the areas that are being used the most. So you can see the shoulders from the pushes, the triceps, the pectoral muscles, even the core here that's just stabilizing against those pushing movements. Our quadricep muscles are being used quite a bit. Our glutes a bit. I didn't put the glutes too much because it's gonna depend on the player. Some players are really good to use them and others, they're more quadricep dominant. It's just to illustrate the fact here that there could be a lot of overuse in our shoulders and a lot of overuse in our quadricep, leading to issues with our knee joint and our shoulder joint. So if knee pain and shoulder pain is something common to you through your capoeira training, especially if you've been doing this for many, many years, there could be a good reason why that is. I would simply suggest to pepper in your own personal training some exercises that will fill the void. Exercises that are lower body pull, exercises that are upper body pull as well. Now we saw a little bit with our bridging exercises that we could do, and I suggest you guys to do it for the lower body. Simple bridging like that. Upper body, there's different versions. Now I'm not going to pull myself to the ceiling here, but if you have a weight, you could play around here. And get more of that posterior chain of your upper body working. One of my most favorite exercises to compensate anything that's kind of missing through my capoeira training is a deadlift. A bit more complex in nature. However, this movement targets a lot our posterior chain in a concentric eccentric contraction and an isometric contraction, meaning that my muscles don't move, of my upper body. So it's really, really good for posture, getting into that nice stance in my ginga, getting my game going, and having a nice strong core, a nice strong stable stance. So I suggest that you do a little bit of research, look at some exercises that you feel can fill the void that's missing in your training, and hopefully that's going to help you improve your game and also be free of any risk of injury. So I hope that this helped. I hope that this was useful today. If you have any questions, any comments, any suggestion at all, leave them below and I will get back to you. As always, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it.